Across these wastes, man has made many a journey for battle or trade, to discovery or oblivion. But of all this restless traffic, no sign remains. There are no footprints in the sea. Today, from his Italian villa, one man still tries to trace the sea's ancient pathways, challenges accepted theories of early travel and migration.
If what I've done has been controversial, I think perhaps this is the main contribution I've had. And I think also I have opened the eyes to scientists as to the fact that the ocean, which has been considered an element of isolation, is the very opposite. It's a highway that could be used by early man, even by the most primitive craft he had.
On the balsa raft Kon-Tiki, led only by current and wind, Norwegian explorer Thor Heyerdahl in 1947 makes a 3-month drift voyage across the Pacific from Peru to Polynesia and dramatically proves the feasibility of similar early journeys. Later at Easter Island, still searching for links to South America, Heyerdahl finds a clue. The petroglyph of a crescent-shaped vessel similar to reed boats in Peru and Bolivia. Eager to test a reed boat's range and the possibility of early contact between Egypt and pre-Columbian America, Heyerdahl builds a vessel Ra of papyrus reed. In 1969 begins a daring transatlantic drift voyage from Morocco, but founders a week short of landfall. Undeterred, Heyerdahl immediately builds a second craft. A year after his first attempted crossing, he and his fellow voyagers triumphantly follow the Atlantic currents from Morocco to Barbados. Now in his tower at Colomacarry, this latter-day Ulysses at 64 plans one final journey. Studying ancient prototypes, he again chooses the familiar crescent shape. Plans to build his craft of the bardi reed from the marshes of Iraq, then test her endurance till she sinks.
Well, this looks excellent to me. Of course, this is the main part of the boat that you understood how these two bundles, these of course will be the bundles of reeds lashed together by rope and just barely touching in the middle.
In Southampton, England, Heyerdahl studies the design's performance under varied conditions.
No, I think it looks perfect. It'll be interesting to see how it will work in the water.
Testing stabilizing devices and rudder oars, Heyerdahl hopes to build a vessel not totally subject to the whim of wind and wave. Always his journeys have gone back in time. Now he will go back farther than ever before. Again, the wind fills the sail, but this time it will take him to a landfall never planned or even imagined. It is a land of beginnings. The terraced ziggurats of Sumer are crumbling now. The city-states of the flat alluvial plain between the Tigris and the Euphrates have vanished. The priests and poets and warrior kings are gone. But out of these ruins, out of the long darkness of unrecorded history, stepped the first civilized man. Near the confluence of the two great rivers stretches a vast, whispering wilderness of water and reed, almost as insubstantial as dreamed. In it, the marsh Arabs of Iraq still live in reed villages of scattered archipelagos, occupied since early Mesopotamian times. They say that this was the Garden of Eden, that here the world began. Here too, in summer 1977, Thor Heyerdahl has come to make a beginning.
Tell them that I'm very happy to be here again, and this time I come to ask them to be kind enough to help me to cut the bardi.
Okay. هو جدا مسرور لأنه ثاني مرة هو يجي هنا وهو جاي هنا على مود يقطع البردي ويريدكم تساعدوه.
نعم نساعد حسب الرسول.
They are ready.
Ask them now if they all agree that this is the best time to cut the bardi.
انتوا كلكم متفقين بأنه أحسن وقت لقطع البردي. The best time.
Well, tell them then we go into the marshes and we start cutting bardi today.
Gliding through the marsh in the stifling August heat that often sends even the Arabs into their reed houses, Heyerdahl feels a perennial hope.
This expedition I'm making because both Route 1 and Route 2 were saturated by water so early that it wouldn't have been possible to do any real navigation with them. We had water at deck level. I want to go in and have a look at this. We hope this time with this type of reed cut in August that we may float so long that we really can find out what the ancient people could have done with this kind of vessel. Okay, this is fine. Guys, tell them to start cutting. They can start.
هسه اشتغلوا قصوا. قصوا.
As the cutting progresses, tons of bardi will be carefully dried, then carried to Kurna, where the Tigris meets the Euphrates.
Adelante.
Because the Arabs have no memory of reed craft, Heyerdahl has summoned a team of 4 Bolivian Indians from Lake Titicaca in the high Andes. Once employed in constructing the second Ra vessel, they are among the handful of living persons who still know the art of reed boat building.
Esto no es papiro, esto papiro, no es papiro.
No es papiro.
Sí, esto
No
es
es papiro.
otra clase.
Sí, otra clase.
Though lacking a common language, Arab and Indian soon form a friendly collaboration, and the work proceeds rapidly. A succession of steps from smaller components into ever larger units. By methods developed through the centuries, some of the reeds are quickly twisted into binding strips. By late September in 1977, thousands of small reed bundles had been gathered and bound. The open ends of the smaller bundles are then stuffed with loose reeds and tied at intervals, gradually lengthening into a bundle 70 feet long and 2 feet thick.
We will have a large number of these, and they will make up the body of the ship.
To Rashad Salim Nazir, the Iraqi interpreter, Heyerdahl explains the procedure.
So it's very important to explain to them that these have to be tied very hard with rope, and they must be of an equal length from the point that the Bolivians have pointed out, and as long as we assign to them. And all these we will bring later and fill inside the boat, and that will form the whole body like a raft.
الله ياهم شيل الدنة اللي جاي تدنوا وين راحوا ذولاكم؟ شوف راح لغاد هذاك وهذول ربعك هنا مقبل عليك تاكم شنو عليك تاكم؟ فوق هناك
Within 3 weeks, dozens of the long bundles are ready. Weighing 1,000 pounds each, they are transported one by one to the construction jig. There, on the bank of the Tigris, for which the craft is already named, they will be assembled into the great mat-covered bundles that will form the twin hulls.
Emotionally, I'd say that I feel that it's a type of vessel that attracts me. And I think it's a type of vessel that has had an unfair deal, both among scientists and among shipping people at the moment. And I think that although I've shown that it is a vessel that can cross an ocean, I have not yet demonstrated to myself and to other people what it really must have been to people in early times when they could build this correctly and when they could handle it correctly, because I think it is one of the most amazing deep-sea vessels that have ever been built.
At last, the smaller bundles, which will form the corazon or heart, are lowered into place.
Eso es un chorizo grande, ¿no? Aquí el corazón. Falta todavía.
Lashed to each of the larger bundles, as shown by Heyerdahl to the Bolivians, it will form a fixed hinge or core between the twin hulls. In early November, construction of the Tigris enters its final phase. At close intervals, heavy hemp ropes are bound around the great hulls, then progressively tightened by work teams, increasingly eager to see the strange result of all their labors. Simultaneously, the reed bundles are beaten into a more compact mass, intent on demonstrating the durability of ancient reed craft. Heyerdahl knows that the tighter the bundles, the longer the vessel will retain its buoyancy.
Okay.
Under the direction of the Bolivian Indians, bow and stern are forced upward into the ancient crescent shape. Now, as departure day swiftly approaches, members of the Tigris International crew, several from earlier voyages, begin to appear. From Norway, medical student Hans-Peter Bern. From the United States, Norman Baker, second in command, navigator, and radio operator. Italian mountaineer Carlo Mauri, ordinary seaman. From the Soviet Union, Yuri Semkevich, astronaut physician, now ship's doctor, examines Hermann Carrasco, Mexican industrialist turned crewman. West German Detlef Zoitzek, second navigator and diver. Cameraman Norris Brock of the United States will film the journey. From Denmark, student Asbjørn Damhus, crewman. Japanese restaurateur Toru Suzuki, crewman. From Iraq, art student Rashad Salim will act as Arab interpreter. In the crowded hours, Heyerdahl once again prepares to take a gambler's risk on all his hopes.
When people ask me where we are going and how long time we are going to sail, my answer is, we do not know. The experiment is to find out how far can you go with a vessel of this kind. And as long as the vessel can float and keeps together, we will push on.
Wait for you, huh?
Hello. شوفك بالبصر.
We have to now say goodbye.
I say, don't worry, we take care of it.
November 23rd, departure day. At once light and clumsy, like some fledgling water bird, Tigris rides the river for which she is named. Yet quickly she will leave it forever. Uncertain, awkwardly responsive to the rudder oars, Tigris feels her way downriver. Along the banks, astonished Arabs stare at this strange apparition from a long-vanished past. From Kurna, Tigris heads down the broad waterway of the Shatt al-Arab toward distant Bahrain, ancient trading center in the Persian Gulf. Along the way at the modern river port of Basra, a raucous greeting salutes her passing. Once a sleepy port town, oil has made of Basra one of the great crossroads of the modern world. Here, 100 ships salute the vagrant visitor from another time.
It's the Iver Stream from Norway.
That's right.
In fact, I think it's from Larvik. That's your hometown, Tor. It is. It's from Larvik. It's from Tor's hometown.
Larvik! It is from my own town.
Alone and unattended, proudly flying the United Nations flag, Tigris enters the Persian Gulf. In her first sea trial, Heyerdahl finds her less maneuverable than he had hoped, is soon met by an unseasonable south wind that threatens to drive them aground in the reefs and shallows.
Well, this map, as it explains in this caution here, the pilot book speaks of depths of 2 to 6 feet. You cannot go there.
Sea anchors have only slowed their ominous drift toward the shoals.
Вы меня поняли правильно. Мы находимся возле острова Файлак.
Urgently, Yuri tries to make contact with the Soviet freighter, the Slavsk, waiting in line on the approach to Basra.
Я вам дам точные координаты. Сейчас я вам дам точные координаты. Мы находимся восточнее этого острова.
Reached at last, the response of the Soviet captain is friendly and immediate. Soon, with vast relief, the crew of Tigris watch a red tender appear in the threatening sea. Filled with boisterous Russians led by Captain Igor Usakowski himself, the tender comes alongside.
He said that we are going on the reef. And he offered that they have to tag us from this place.
Yeah.
Tigris Heyerdahl and my father.
Yeah.
You see, believe me, I like you. I like you, like a father, like I read it all newspaper, all you read it, books. Believe me, but here it is a very difficult place.
It is.
Absolutely not for currents, not for winds. My opinion. Значит, my opinion,
Я переведу, я все переведу.
и экипаж просит бухту Кувейт.
His opinion is to drag us to Kuwait by his ship.
Since we are really going in a direction where the chart shows it's too dangerous,
Значит, сейчас мы идем в направлении, которое очень опасно.
we shall take up.
Мы сейчас уходим от безопасного направления.
We shall take up our sea anchor. We are now hanging on to
У
our
нас
sea anchor.
сейчас плавучий якорь за бортом.
And accept your offer to tow us out of here.
Значит, первое, что мы хотим, чтобы вы нас отсюда оттянули.
Да, окей, точно, блядь. Значит, боцман.
A toast thanking you for all your expressions of friendship and assistance. To you and all the rest of the men on board this Slavsk. Thank you.
By all maritime courtesy, knowing that in the wide sea all men are vulnerable, Captain Usakowski delays other tasks to perform a small human duty. For 4 days, the Slavsk tows Tigris 300 miles down the Gulf to the port of Bahrain. Once center of fabled Dilmun, a mythical land without death, scene of man's earliest epic poem recorded on clay tablets 1,500 years before Homer, Bahrain's most astonishing remains today are the 100,000 burial mounds that stretch for miles across the nearby desert. In the ancient ruins, noted archaeologist Dr. Jeffrey Bibby describes Bahrain's more worldly history of early trade through the Persian Gulf.
Well, from the long-distance trade, as it were. We found, actually, in the entrance here, we found one seal with the Indus Valley script on it, one of these round seals.
Fantastic.
And besides it, a cuneiform tablet only 10 centimeters away. I mean, the two cultures just side by side.
This was found right in the gate.
Yes. And inside, of course, you've got a street going on, but you've got a square over there.
Yes.
With this well in the middle, you can still see it.
You are the one who identified this very clearly, Bahrain Island, with the legendary Dilmun, and they also also speak of the copper.
Yes, and they speak of cargoes of up to 30 tons.
Yes.
And that's why I wanted to know whether a reed boat can take that weight. And
yes.
I gather...
This I can answer already. No, that's one of the questions we already have answered before we came here. We have been 11 men on board with 15 tons of cargo. And as you saw, we're floating very high, and we could, with no difficulty, carry not only 30 tons, but even 50 tons, and come right in here in a water that would fit what you say here, the water level would have
without putting you so deep in the water.
With no problem at all. It's a fantastic vessel.
Now an Arab dhow tows Tigris out into the wind. Later, with interpreter Rashad Salim aboard as communications link with Tigris, the dhow will serve as escort vessel until the reed craft safely passes through the heavily trafficked Strait of Hormuz, several days' sail to the east.
Here we go.
What about Herman?
Pull your preventer. Deadlift. Pull your preventer. One more time. Let's go. Ready. Up. Ready. Up. That's it. Make fast.
As if sensing she is free at last, Tigris runs before the wind. At the tiller, Heyerdahl himself feels a new assurance. Even the crew, 10 men from 9 nations, seem to share the reed boat's buoyancy when the breakfast bell is rung.
Good morning. Breakfast in 10 minutes. 10 minutes to go.
Sorry.
What's the breakfast up here? What do you think is breakfast? Oatmeal. Try again. Bacon and eggs. Try again.
With the wind steady at her back, Tigris pushes swiftly across the Gulf. Quickly, the men fall into the disciplined schedules of watches and other duties. But now, abruptly, communications with the Arab dhow are broken. Unknown to Tigris, the disabled dhow has been forced to shore for repair. Tigris will have to run Hormuz Strait alone.
These cliffs look really wild and terrible, and according to the map, there is absolutely no anchorage. It all drops right into the sea.
You can see that right now.
And there is no light, there is no habitation. We can never find the dhow unless by chance. All I can see we can do with this wind is to try to steer right for the Hormuz Strait and get out through our own piloting.
Already they are sighting the first of the great tankers and freighters that make the Hormuz Strait one of the busiest marine passages in the world. Here, more than a third of the world's oil production passes each day in tankers of 100,000 to 500,000 tons. Amid these behemoths, moving through the narrow channel, the 30-ton Tigris will be little more than a cork in a mill race. Once again, Heyerdahl tries to reach the missing crewman, Rashad.
Rashad, do you hear me? We haven't seen the dhow since 7 o'clock this morning. We haven't heard you all day. The last we heard was you mentioned Ras al-Shaykh. We are passing Ras al-Shaykh now, and I tried to call you. Rashad, do you hear me? Over.
From the surrounding sea, there is no reply. Puzzled, increasingly anxious over the fate of the dhow as well as their own, Heyerdahl and the Tigris crew sail on into the strait. With the approach of darkness, lanterns are lit and hoisted aloft. Feeble guardians against the monstrous shapes of the great tankers and freighters looming all around them. In sleepless silence, broken only by the creak of the ropes or the distant clang of a ship's bell, Tigris moves through the night. Dawn. Somehow, with luck, Tigris has negotiated the strait. But now, drifting off the coastline, there remains a more pressing worry. Where are Rashad and the dhow?
The main thing is that we got through now. Great hurry. We don't mind waiting here.
No, I don't mind waiting here at all.
As a matter of fact, I'd prefer it, because maybe that the boat will be coming out with Rashad looking for us.
That would be nice. Wouldn't that be great?
As the hours wear on, the question in everyone's mind hangs there unanswered.
I see a dhow coming, Herman.
It is our dhow, yeah?
That's fantastic, it is. I see Rashad already in the binoculars.
Wow.
Rashad! Rashad! Welcome back!
We get him back.
Said Abdullah!
We looked for your light. We saw there was no light. And we spoke on the radio. Hey.
Hello.
Welcome back. I was really
Well, welcome home. Welcome home. Welcome home.
I'm glad to be home.
Let's just do a good New Year, okay? We have a good start.
Hey!
New Year!
Together again, the New Year gives a timely excuse for celebration.
Cups up, please. Roast goes fast. Ready? Did the Russians have Greek dogs? Or just caviar?
They may have it in the future.
This is a special Norwegian gløgg, you call it. It's made of fruits and wine and medical alcohol. It's medical alcohol. Yeah. You can taste it.
Okay, we ended the year with a good north wind as we needed. Let us hope that we begin the next one with a good northeast breeze.
Okay.
You have to think of that one. That's what we need.
I'll drink of that. All right.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm very sorry to interrupt this, but at a party like this, I'm afraid we must have a bit of fireworks. Right. I brought a small package just for the same thing.
From the Strait of Hormuz, Heyerdahl now sets course along the coast of Oman on the eastern side of the Arabian Peninsula. On the ancient port of Muscat, the ways of the modern world have left only an uneven imprint. In the clamorous souk or marketplace, the past seems close by. Since the dawn of historic times, traders from Mesopotamia and ports of the Arabian Sea have come to this land to trade in hides, wool, grain, precious stones, and frankincense. But it's another commodity that interests Heyerdahl. Not far away, he's brought to the site of a mine and smelters, which he believes may have been the fabled Copper Mountain of antiquity, source of ore for early bronze weapons and tools. Dr. Paola Costa, archaeological advisor to the Sultan of Oman, describes this site.
We have a slag which still contains copper.
How much do you think there is here?
Well, it has been calculated roughly to 40,000 tons of slag.
It's enormous.
Of slag.
Climbing the unstable slag, the party approaches the supposed entrance to the site. But today the arch opens only on emptiness. There's no trace of mine or furnaces. Any ore long ago converted into Bronze Age relics, now scattered in the world's museums. Here only time and the wind remain. Once again, Tigris II gives herself to the wind, heading south. It is January 12, almost 2 months since she entered her namesake river 1,000 sea miles to the northwest.
So we've had a 40-degree wind shift.
But in this year, the seasonal winds are fickle and perverse. 3 days after departing Muscat, she was driven back within sight of the same port. Now, as all hands rally to rig the ship for bad weather, she heads into a squall line.
I need crew back here. I need crew here. Hey, get one. That's it. Loose the sheets. Send down the water in front.
Racked by the sea, the reeds endure. The crew, men of 9 nations, become a single cohesive unit. Yet now, like mariners of old, they learn that the storm has blown them far astray.
Arc. Okay, the second sunshot confirms the first one. And we've come more than 50 miles since noon yesterday.
In other words, we can say we are leaving the Gulf of Oman.
Oh yes, you're definitely crossing the boundary this morning.
Yeah.
You're definitely leaving the Gulf. You're out into the Arabian Sea now.
We are much closer to Pakistan now than to the Arabian Peninsula.
Delighted, Heyerdahl learns Tigris has been swept east toward Pakistan's Indus Valley, home of a civilization contemporary with late Sumerian times. Strangers from the sea, a warm welcome awaits the crew on the beach near the shark fishing village of Ormara. Today, the Indus Valley seems a backwater, remote from the modern world. Yet, as Heyerdahl reminds the crew, the early advances of cities such as Mohenjo-Daro made our civilization possible. In the lower Indus Valley, Heyerdahl makes a discovery. 1,300 miles from the marshes of southern Iraq, the bardi reed, so often used for structures or watercraft in treeless communities of early times, here stretches in a wide expanse across the wet bottomlands. Struck by repeated similarities, increasingly convinced of early sea communications between Mesopotamia and the Indus Valley, Heyerdahl leads a visit to the Mohenjo-Daro Museum. Here waits an astonishing find, an engraved soapstone seal, in early use by traders to stamp wet clay emblems of ownership. Across nearly 50 centuries sails a crescent-shaped reed boat, crudely identical with Tigris herself. Upon the wide sea, Heyerdahl again tries to follow its vanished track, pursuing the wakes of ghost ships long lost in time. But the creak of ropes, the sudden snap of the sail, are those of his own.
When we left the Indus Valley, we sailed, as you all know, for a number of days without any definite aim. And then I was tempted, and the wind and current indicated that this would be a good solution. Let us try, once we have linked up Mesopotamia with Indus Valley, let us see if it is possible to link this one up again with the Red Sea area, that is with the early Egyptian world. In that case, if we manage, then we have linked all the early civilizations up by primitive navigation. And this is why I have suggested that we set a course straight for the Red Sea.
Sailing southwestward toward the Horn of Africa, Tigris' present course will take her past the mystery-shrouded island of Socotra, commanding the approaches to the Gulf of Aden. But now the wind slackens. As Tigris drifts in the idle sea, Asbjørn and Detlef go below to make a periodic check of the hull. Encrusted with barnacles, the rudder oars must again be scraped clean. But though marine mosses cover the bottoms of the great twin hulls, the tightly packed reeds remain undamaged. Above the loitering Dorado, a frequent mealtime delicacy, Heyerdahl and Norman Baker circle in the dinghy, pleased by Tigris' continued buoyancy.
As we saw swimming there, I mean, the repair is perfect. There is nothing wrong with it, and we haven't lost a single piece of bardi.
Nope. No, that's really fine. I check the repair every time I go into the water, and that's really holding up beautifully.
We have gone down, there's no question, but we've been in for how many days?
I think we've been in the water longer than Raw 1 or Raw 2.
Asbjørn! What's his name? Asbjørn.
A chance visitor brought aboard by Detlef narrowly escaped staying for dinner.
Asbjørn the sea turtle. I think he looks just like you, Asbjørn.
No, we should eat it, huh?
No, we let him go. No. It can live for a long time.
Okay.
Let it leave.
Hey, well, let's keep him and Asbjørn in the water instead.
Let it go.
Okay. Be careful.
Scrape it off.
Cooking by rotation, the two Scandinavians, Asbjørn and Hans Peter, use their turn to give a party.
All right. What do you call that, HP?
This is the Tigris souffle.
Oh, my gosh.
Made from bardi, seaweed, and what's the rest of the ingredients?
Oh, HP.
Con bardi.
Everybody going to see a goodie.
Hermano, as a boy in Norway, we used to play a birthday game called My Ship is Loaded With. And we took a handkerchief and we threw it to somebody and said a letter. And that person should say a word that started with that letter that the ship could be loaded with. Oh. So now I throw the handkerchief and I say, my ship is loaded with sea. Cooks. One is better than the other here, huh? To the two for today, huh?
I'll drink of that.
Yeah.
Here's the
Carlo, as a super cook, you have to join us in drinking for the two who made spaghetti, or what do you call it? Souffle.
Spaghetti. Enjoy spaghetti. Very bad spaghetti. I'm sorry. And now look at what this joint Scandinavian effort has made for dessert. A pudding surprise. That's a fantastic, it's very small, but that's the fantastic features that it will grow and grow and grow, and it will be big enough for everybody. Just like this.
That's what we don't need.
How did you do that? Quickly growing yeast.
That's what we don't need.
E tu? Sì. Si vedono le montagne di Socotra.
Dove?
Which is Socotra?
Fantastic.
Hey!
There it is, right in the clouds.
We sailed from Asia to Africa, Norman.
Beautiful to make landfall.
One continent to the other.
So that's 1,100 miles plus from Karachi to Socotra.
It's March 14, 1978. Over 3 months and 3,000 miles from Iraq, Tigris reaches Socotra near the Gulf of Aden. Part of democratic Yemen on the southern coast of the Arabian Peninsula, the strategically situated island of Socotra reportedly holds Soviet military installations. Now on the radio comes an ominous warning.
Tigris Roger, have approached the Embassy of South Yemen in London for permission for Tigris to land in Socotra if necessary. Stop. Tigris must not attempt to land on this island before such written permission has been given. Stop.
In dismay, the voyagers try to clear the island's cape.
So we have 8 hours of current to bring us past that point, and I don't think we're
no, I think that we have actually no choice. I mean, we go so slowly that I think we can take the risk, try to steer for the, to clear the cape as much as we can, and by sunrise tomorrow morning we have to take a final decision. We are not going to collide with the cliff in the first 12 hours.
Yeah, that's right.
If we go ashore, we may expect trouble.
In the grip of a current, lacking strong winds to free her, Tigris shoreward drift is measured by timing the passage of a floating reed.
Stop. This was 15 seconds. 15 seconds. So it's 15 seconds, that means about 1.4 now.
In silence, the men measure their chances of clearing the cape and wait for dawn. Then out of the darkness, another warning.
Tigris Roger, you risk arrest if you land on Socotra without permission. Stop.
Dawn, and the current still pushes Tigris inexorably closer to the island. Gradually, buildings and traffic on the roads become clearly visible to the men on Tigris. Hopeful that the United Nations flag will be accepted as a signal of their innocent intentions, the voyagers can only watch and wait. Now, like a fresh hope, wind fills the sail. Yielding to the helm, Tigris fights the current. By the narrowest of margins, the reed boat safely passes the cape. Yet still needing fresh provisions as they head toward the Red Sea, Heyerdahl sends messages to adjacent countries, asking permission to land.
Tigris, roger. We will ask Djibouti, Saudi Arabia, Sudan, and the North Yemen for permission to land. Stop. Aden and Somalia are almost certainly closed to us. Stop.
During quiet hours, Heyerdahl details the voyage and its parallel achievement. In their tiny 60-foot world, 11 diverse men have sometimes disagreed, yet survived in friendship, each knowing that his life is guarded by all the others.
Tigris, roger. Remember, Ethiopia is at war with Somalia and Eritrea. Stop.
Like hammer blows, the replies come in.
Tigris, roger. No one in Somalia answering phones yesterday, as major town had fallen to the Ethiopians. Very strongly urge you not to attempt to land on any of these territories. Stop.
For Heyerdahl, the night is long and dark. For a little while, like another voyager from Ithaca, they have sailed the wine-dark seas of long ago. But the past, with all its tumults and achievements, has vanished under time's horizon, leaving only scattered vestiges of itself, like phrases from a half-remembered tune. And now again the wind has fallen. They are stranded on the hard rock of the present. In the quiet morning, a migrating bird finds rest in the rigging of this floating sanctuary. Blown from its African flyway far to the west, it too seems as lost as they, travelers denied a destination. Abruptly, a military reconnaissance plane thunders overhead. In hours to come, other aircraft from the warring nations that border the Gulf will circle the vessel, sometimes friendly, sometimes suspicious of this curious apparition from the past. Now in African waters, Tigris approaches the only port open to her, the tiny nation of Djibouti near the Red Sea. At last, after a voyage of 4,200 miles and 132 days, Tigris enters Djibouti. Once the great nation sent missionaries to Africa. Now they send guns. Protected by the French Navy, Djibouti is filled with refugees from battles raging in the countries around it. No less, Heyerdahl and his crew also have become displaced persons. Upon such fragile yet durable craft as this, civilization once carried its gifts from one people to another. Tigris, too, has brought gifts, but who will receive them? Once again, the crew embarks. Once again, Tigris is towed from the harbor. Like strangers from another time, Heyerdahl and the men gaze at the wartime port. The past, too, had fought its wars, committed unspeakable savageries. Yet it also had left us the best of what it was. Always it had moved outward across frontiers. A man brought a wheel, made a mark that meant a sound, invented a god to forgive him. Now the frontiers were closing. The gods were gone. And so perhaps was forgiveness.
We have felt that we've been living 5,000 years ago among really civilized people. And then suddenly we wake up to be in the year 1978, where wonderful people on both sides of the Red Sea are killing each other. And we know that people in all nations are so alike that to try to solve problem by killing other people that are like yourself is the greatest stupidity man ever invented. That's why we've sailed under the United Nations flag.
Around the table, the familiar faces are silent, each man drawn inward, listening to the voices and laughter of other days. Carefully, the flags are taken down. This time, Tigris will make a different journey.
Just do a good New Year, okay? Stop, please. It is. It's from Larvik. It's from Jordan.
It is from my own town.
Rashad! Welcome back!
She really looks strange with her sails up and not a soul aboard.
It looks beautiful.
In a world where victory and defeat seldom hold the old clear meanings, where anguish is a common lot and prayers are elegies for the damned, 11 men on a hill in Djibouti have spoken a quiet word for peace. Brought from the past, a reminder that the great gulfs which separate men are not too wide for crossing.
There was still a lot of life in that ship, huh? A lot of life.